now at Fante International High School, and we urge you all to subscribe to His Gov TV. Thank you.
Hello there, you're welcome to His Gov TV. Before we begin with our discussions today, I would like to remind you to subscribe to the channel in case you have not done so. And if you have also subscribed, thank you very much for your support. Please subscribe to the channel. This is the only platform that you get access to history, CRS, as well as government lessons based on the West African Senior Certificate Examination, WASI, the WASI syllabus. So please kindly subscribe before you leave the page so that you can get a notification for more exciting and educative lessons. So today we are looking at the Fante Confederation, and we will look specifically at the reasons for the formation of the Fante Confederacy. And that's what our topic is going to be today. I know that you have heard about the Fante Confederation before, but before we go into today's lessons, let's try and remind ourselves in our previous lesson what we learned. And if you missed that that lesson, I would include the link in the description so that you can go and check. So I'll title it the RPK, or the Relevant Previous Knowledge. Now, in that lesson, we looked at the Asante War, and that was the last series of war fought between the British and the Asante Empire in 1900. And we concluded that even though Asante or the Asante army were defeated, the objective of the war, of course, was achieved. And so the Asantes were able to maintain or keep the golden stool from the British. And so, in a way, the British were not able to achieve their objectives, and thereby making them the losers, even though they arrested their Asante and some other chiefs and exiled them as well to Seychelles Island in 1900 to join Nana Pempe, who had already been exiled in 1897. So today we are looking at the Fante Confederation, another issue or phenomenon that occurred in the course of the Asante British Wars. This formation of the Confederation also occurred. So all of them occurred almost at the same time. So it's not as if the fight, came before the Confederation came. No, the Confederation was formed somewhere in 1863. So it was almost as at the time the Asantes were invading the coast that this also occurred around or among the Fante states. So before we begin with today's lesson, look at the meaning of confederation in the dictionary. And I'm sure if you understand the meaning of confederacy in the dictionary, you would understand what we mean by the Fante Confederation. So let's go in there and look at our lesson objectives for today. So our lesson objectives for today is quite simple. Is that by the end of this lesson, we should be able to outline the reasons for the formation of the Fante Confederacy in 1868 at Mankasim. And so why was the Confederacy founded in Mankasim in 1868? And they could ask you a question, an essay question on this. So please bear with us and let's learn together. Good. So let's take a look at the introduction to the Confederacy. Okay. Let's take a look at the introduction to the Confederacy. So we are saying that the Fante Confederation was one of the self-rule movements formed by the southern states to resist colonialism in the Gold Coast. So the southern states formed this association, or founded this association known as the Fante Confederation. And the map you see on your right hand side here refers to the southern states. Now, self-rule in the sense that it was formed by these people to rule themselves, because they felt that they were being colonized by either the British or the Asante, and so self-rule movement tried to attain independence for themselves. Okay, to try and achieve independence for themselves. That's what we mean by self-rule movement. Now, to resist colonization, the Fante Confederation was fighting two fronts. They were trying to do away with the British, whom they had relied upon for protection whenever the Asantes invade their towns or states. Again, they were also forming this association against the invasion of the Asante Empire. So Asante had wanted to make all these states a vassal states. Indeed, the Denchura people here, the Wasa people over here, and then the Chufu and Co, the Asin over here, all these states were already for the Asante Empire. Elmina here again was for the Asante Empire. Okay, so Asante was trying all it could to make all these states vassal states. And so these Fante states, in the course of that, came together, brought all their resources together, became a confederacy, and then championed self-rule, fought back against the Asantes. Now, the Confederation was founded in 1868, and it was founded in Mankesim, all right? And it was founded by certain Fante states. So it included Fante states and also non-Fante states. So the states that founded the Confederacy, even though the name is Fante Confederation, the members or the member states in the Confederation were not only Fantes. Now, example of the Fante states, we had Abra and Mabo, Mankesim, and Gomwa. And they are found here. We have Gomwa here, we have Mankesim here, we have Anmabu here, okay, we have Abra 2 is here, Abra Dunkwa is here, Dunkwa Abra Krampa is here, and all of that. Now, some of the non-Fante states were Denchura, Wasa, Chufu, Asin, as well as Seshi, and they are all found over here. So this is Wasa, this is Denchura, this is Asin. So they are all found in this area. So it will surprise you, and you ask yourself, so then why did these non-Fante states join a confederation which had Fante Confederation, or which had the name Fante, knowing very well that they were not Fantes? We'll look at that in the course of our discussions. I'll let you know why they joined. Now, this was their seal, the seal of the Fante Confederation. It had and this is Gold Coast. The name here is Gold Coast. It had the emblems of an elephant and then also a palm tree. All right, because the Gold Coast, referred to as the Fante states, is the same states in the Gold Coast that form the Fante Confederacy. All right, so when you asked anywhere to name non-Fante states that joined the Fante Confederacy, please don't go and be mentioning Abra, Gomwa, and Mabo and Co. No, they were not part of the Confederacy. They were Denchura, Wasa, Chufu, Asin, and Seshi. They were the non-Fante states. And we are asked to mention Fante states. Please don't go and be mentioning non-Fante states. Good. Now let's go in there and look at the reasons for the formation of the Fante Confederacy. So the first one, as I earlier indicated, was the desire to defend themselves against the Asante invasion. Asante, all this while, was the most powerful empire in the region. And so Asante had, conquered many states and made them vassals. And so vassal state means that they will be paying tribute to the Asante. And Denchura and Wasa, Asin, and all these states had already been acquired by the Asante nation after they attacked Adanse and they conquered the Adanse state. They then had Denchura and then the Wasa and Co. So these Fantes saw that if they don't come together to unite and fight back the Asante invasion, all of them will be ruled by the Asante or the Asante nation, the Asante empire, or all of them will become a vassal state to the Asante empire. And so they had to come together to unite and defend their territory against the Asante. Before this unity came, or this confederation came, when you go to the southern part, or among the Fantes, each of the states are independent, okay, of the other. So the Anmabo king is not under any king. The Mankesim king is not under any king. He is on his own. unlike the Asante, whereby you have a paramount chief, the Asante Hime. In the southern sector, it was different. So when there is a war, when Asante is attacking Abra, Mankesim cannot come in to support because Mankesim has nothing to do with Abra, both politically. You understand? And so that is what was happening. So they realized that if they don't come together, they were going to be colonized. And so they had to come. The most interesting invasion that even made them to realize this unity was that the Asantes invaded in 1863. So in 1863, the Asantes invaded the southern coast, and it was devastating, And the southern states or the Fante states were relying on the British for protection. So whenever Asante invade these southern towns, the British, fearing for their own safety, will go in there and fight on behalf of the southern state to ward off the Asante army, because they had signed many treaties with the southern states. For instance, the 1844 bond was signed, all for protection, even though some of them say, or the British took it as the southern states of granting their sovereignty, which was not so. Now, in this particular invasion, the British delayed, their counter-invasion delayed. And so by the time the British came in favor or in the side of the southern state, the harm had already been caused. They had been finished. The Asante had finished them off. And so the southern state became very, very, very furious as to the attitude of the British in delaying in coming to their aid. And so that even prompted them, and that became the immediate factor that, hey, you know what, let us unite. Let us not look up to these white men for protection, because they can fail us as they have failed us today. All right. So that is that the desire to defend against the Asante invasion. Now, the next reason for the formation of the Fante Confederation was the Sweet River Convention. We've already talked about the Sweet River Convention during our last lessons on the reasons for the Anglo-Asante Wars. If you could remember, we said that one of the reasons for the Anglo-Asante Wars was the Sweet River Convention. In short, the Sweet River Convention, the Sweet, of course, river is the name of a river, and the river is called Sweet River, around between Mankesim and Cape Coast thereabout. So, yeah, it's the name of a river over there. Now, this agreement was that, or this convention was that there was going to be an exchange of forts and castles between the Dutch and the British in 1867. So under the agreement, under this convention, all forts and castles, all the forts and castles east of the Sweet River were to go for the British, and all the forts and castles at the western part of the river were to go for the Dutch. You get a point. So we are going to exchange forts. At this time, it was only the Dutch and the British who were remained, or who were left on the coast of Ghana. And so they decided to exchange forts and castles, so that one party will have her fort and castles at one end, then the other party will also have her fort and castles at the other end, okay, so that it could be uniform. And the reason was simple, so that they could collect effective way of collecting duties, because some people were smuggling goods, they were swerving, and so it was for effective collection of duties. All right. Yes. Now let's look at this. So let's assume that this is the Sweet River. So the Sweet River was used as a boundary. That's why it's called the Sweet River Convention. So let's assume that this is the Sweet River. So per this agreement, what happens is that fort and castles east of the Sweet River were to go for the British. It means that the British were to take here. So let's write B here. So all this area coming down here were for the British. Oh, I'm trying to draw an arrow and it's not coming. Yes, so all this area here was for the British. Then the Dutch, let me write D here. The Dutch were to also take here at the western part going. So all the forts and castles here were to be given to the British. And all the forts and castles in the western side over here along the coast were to be given to the Dutch. Now, take a look at why Asante, why the Fante Confederation or the Fante state had issues with this agreement or exchange. Now, let's come down here. The news of exchange infuriated both the Fante and non-Fante states. So both the Fante states along the coast here that I have already showed you and the non-Fante states over here were infuriated. They were angry. Why were they angry? Especially Denchira, Wasa, and Chufo, who are located over here, were angry. Why were they angry? Because look at where even Denchira is over here, and Wasa and Asin. So and Chufo over here. Why were they angry? Including the people of Commander. And Commander is here. This is Commander. So why were the people of Commander as well as the non-Fante states angry? This is what happened. Now you see, when this exchange is going to happen, when this exchange happens, what that means is that all the people here along the coast here, okay, over here, and then up here, including the Denchira, the Wasa, the Chufu, they are all here. They were all found over here. Which means that all the people here are going to be under the influence of the Dutch. So it means that Wasa, Denchira, Chufu, and Co are going to be under the influence of the Dutch because they fall within the territory of the Dutch-controlled area. Including Commander here, which is even situated along the coast, was also going to be under the influence of the Dutch. And then Elmina and Cape Coast and Co are going to be under the influence of the British. And you'll recall that the reasons for the Anglo-Asante Wars, frequent Anglo-Asante Wars, one of them was the exchange of the forts and castles. And we saw that when that exchange happens, what it means that Elmina, which is here, will fall under the British. So it will become under the British influence. And we established that Elmina was a source where the Asante Empire got guns and gunpowder from. That was like a port to them. And Elmina was a vassal state to the Asante. You remember that? And so Asante did not want Elmina to fall to the British, because when it falls or when it comes under the British control, it means that they are not going to get access to gun and gunpowders anymore. More so, the Dutch were paying land rent to the Asante Hine. So Kofi Kare, you recall him in the Sagaranti War, of course, attacked the British in order to secure Elmina. The same thing also happened here. The people of Commander were not, of course, ready to be under the British protection because they were foremost under the British protection. They didn't want to be under the Dutch protection now, because before this agreement, the people of Commander were under the British protection. It was the British that was protecting them. But if this agreement happens, what that means is that they are going to be under the Dutch. And we established in our previous lessons that the Dutch were friends of the Asantes. So if they allow themselves to be under the Dutch, it means that when Asante attacks them or Commander, the Dutch will not protect them. They will look on unconcerned. Do you understand? The people of Commander are not happy because they were under the British protection. But with this, we can all see that with this agreement, when it happens that way, it means the Dutch are going to take control of over here. And what that means is that Commander is going to be under the Dutch. And the Dutch are friends of the Asante, which then presupposes that whenever the Asantes attack commander, the Dutch will not intervene. And so the people of Dutch were not willing to come under the Dutch protection. The non-Fante states of Danger, Wasatchufo and Co. also had the same concerns because they will also fall under the influence of the Dutch because they are located just right over there. So they will fall under the influence of the Dutch, and they also don't want to be under the influence of their enemy. Now, when that happened, when the people of Commander refused to accept this agreement, the Dutch bombarded them, or the Dutch attacked them in a war to subdue them, to accept the agreement. However, when the British also heard about the Dutch rebellion against when the British heard about the Commander rebellion to the Dutch, the British also bombarded the people of Commander. They were bombarded. Their city was bombed, or their state was bombed by the British. And so that, action of the British made the people of the southern state, including both the Asante, including both the Fante and the non-Fante state, to be wary or cautious, because they felt that the British were their protector. But here they are, the British bombarding them because they refused to be under the Dutch. They felt they were loyal to the British. So why would the British not come to their aid, but rather come and bombard them? So that became like an eye-opener to them. Say, hey, you know what? Let us rally together, come together, get an army to fight back the Dutch. So the Fante Confederation came up with an army to help the people of Commander to fight against the Dutch. It's very interesting. But you see, I think that the mistake that our forefathers made here, or that these Europeans came for their own reasons. Whatever they did for us was just an unintentional consequences. They didn't intend to do them for us. They were protecting the people along the coast for their own safety. They were not protecting them because they wanted to protect them. No, because they feared that if they allowed them to be conquered, it means that they are also not safe. That is the reason why they would help them. But it looks like the southern states, or the southern chiefs or people, took it in a different way. And now, look at what was happening here. The British responded by bombarding the people of Commander. And so, these other Fante states had to be wary and say, did you see that? No, we have to come together. And so that was how the Sweet River Convention also contributed to the formation of the Fante Confederation. I hope you get the explanation. It's quite complicated, but let's take it like that. Now, again, there was the role of the educated elite. The educated elite also played a very significant role in the formation of the Fante Confederation. You know who the educated elites were, right? Because we've done colonial rule, and so you know them. We've done some of the nationalist activities, so you know. I will not say who the educated elites were. But these educated elites, because they were enlightened, they were listening to proceedings in British Parliament. They were listening to news outside. So they had heard in the British Parliament in 1865, whereby in the British Parliament it was recommended that the British withdraw from the Gold Coast. So in the British Parliament it was discussed somewhere in 1865. It was even in a recommendation that they should withdraw from the Gold Coast because of the various wars that was happening between themselves and the Asante. So the educated elite knew what was happening, or what the people, the British government was discussing, or the idea of the British government. And so since they have recommended that they should withdraw, probably they will withdraw. So if they withdraw, we should get ready to take up the mantle to rule ourselves. And so people like D.L. Carr, Joseph Martin, Joseph Hughes, a West Indian, Charles Bannerman, James Emisar, James Martin Brew, F.C. Grant, J.A. Houghton, they began to persuade the chiefs that it is time for them to govern themselves and throw off the British rule. All these people, you have heard their names, are all black men. Just that because they've been to school in the white man's land, they decided to take the white man's name, which up to now I still have issues with that. But let's move on. Others also influence, so that their actions also led to the formation of the Confederacy. So we come together as a unified force and form a government. Other people that also influenced the creation of the Confederation were F.C. Grant, I think we've already mentioned his name, R.J. Agate, later Kingate of Winneba, J.D. de Graft Hayford, J.F. Emisa, and J.H. Brew, all these people. So with that committee recommendation in the British parliamentary, of course, discussions, they then, of course, decided to persuade the chiefs to come together to form a government, and that also led to the formation of the Fante Confederation. Another reason for the formation of the Fante Confederation was the treatment meted out to King Agri of Cape Coast. King Agri of Cape Coast, he allied with the educated elite, and then he resisted sending his case from his court, or cases from his court, to the British court on appeal. You know, traditionally, it was, if you had issues, you go to the chief or the palace for settlement. But here, the British ordered King Agri to bring cases on appeal to the British court. And King Agri felt that, no, I am the king of these people. We have been adjudicating their case for time immemorial before you came. So why should I send any appeal to your court? So he refused. Again, he also refused to accept the people of Cape Coast and other areas as being subject to the British. You know, interestingly, when the British came, before independence, they considered the Gold Coasters as their subjects. So you'll be called British subject. And when King Agri allows you to do this, what that means is that then who is he king over? Because a king and you don't have subjects. Who are your subjects? You don't have it. So he refused to accept that the people of Cape Coast were British subjects. Again, he refused to sign a document giving the area around Cape Coast Castle to the British. And so because of these actions, in December 1866, the governor at that time, Conran, arrested and exiled King Agri to Sierra Leone. He returned back to Cape Coast as a private citizen in 1869. He was lucky, he came back early, unlike Nana Prempeh and Co. But he came back as a private citizen in the sense that when he returned, he was not allowed to be king anymore. And you see, that tells you how weak the political structure of the southern states were, because King Agri returned back as a private person. Nana Prempeh, just only 2 years or 3 years or so. Nana Prempeh went there for almost more than 24 years, yet he came back as a king of the Asante Empire. And it's all because of the unity, you understand? So this treatment meted out to King Agri also became an eye-opener to the chiefs who were relying on the British for support or for protection, that it is time they also come together to rule themselves. All right? Good. And so that also became an eye-opener that led to the formation of the Fante Confederation. Good. So this is an object question which says that highlight any 5 reasons for the formation of the Fante Confederation in 1868 at Mankesim, 2012. So if you meet this question, I think all the points that we have discussed, you explain them to your best ability, and I am hopeful that you would make headway. All right, so thank you very much for your time. In our next video, we shall look at the achievements and the failures of the Fante Confederacy. If you have any question for me or any topic you may want us to look at, you kindly